Number 9, gathering. This is what your sample looks like when it's finished. This is the outside, the right side, and this is what the inside of the sample will look like. To start, you have 2 pieces that are 3 by 7, and then you start by cutting one piece down to 3 by 4. So the length will be 4 inches. Then you're going to notch the center of both pieces. So you do that by folding this in half, and with your marking tool, mark the center. So you've notched by marking the center on both pieces. You can also take your scissors and make a small 1/8 of an inch snip in case your fabric pin comes out. So now you are going to stitch a basting line on the inside of the 1/2 inch seam. So I'm going to demo that on my sewing machine. So again, the basting, you come over and you make sure that you are using the longest stitch length on your sewing machine. And we are going, for this sample, we are going to do 2 rows of basting, one that is just on the outside of our 1/2 inch seam allowance. So there's no back stitching. You hold onto the threads. We get to the end, you can use the hand wheel and stitch all the way to the end, needle up, lift the presser foot up, and pull those threads away. You want to leave some thread there because later we will use those threads. So you're going to do 2 rows. Now for the second row of basting, you will stitch at 1/4 of an inch. So again, no back stitching. You're using that longer stitch length. And you're stitching this second row of basting. Now you're going to start by pinning, lining up your notches in the center here, and pinning that together. Next, you're going to bring the edges, the cut edges together, and pin both the edges, the left and the right side. Now we're going to gather those threads. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a pin and I'm going to separate the 4 threads. I have the top thread and the bottom thread. And I hold these threads in my hand, and then I'm right-handed, so I'm holding this in my right hand, and I'm going to push the fabric. So the basting will bunch up, and you push those threads in towards the center. So you're adding in fullness. And you're going to do that from each side. Now I'm going over to the left side, separating the threads, getting 2 threads to hold onto, and pushing the fabric. After you have enough gathers in there, then you can even them out. So you may even need to remove a few of the gathers because you want it to be even. Here this is over gathered because now I have excess fabric in the back layer. So I'm going to release some of those gathers. Then you can add another pin to hold it in place. And the final step is where then you are going to stitch just on the outside of this basting line. So you turn the stitch length dial back to your regular stitch length between 2.5 and 3. Stitch your seam at 1/2 inch, and you will keep the gathers up on top so you can control them and make sure that they are not getting bunched up or folded and staying even. Don't stitch over pins, stitch up to a pin and remove it. Adjusting those gathers, the bunches, as you go. Keeping these edges aligned up at the top. When you get to the end, backstitch. Cut your threads. And flip it over and make sure that on the outside you do not have any basting threads showing. If you do, you can remove them with your seam ripper.